Alright guys, so today we'll be talking about shift layers in the GameSir Connect app with the G7 Pro 8K AIM Labs edition. So I'm just going to be explaining to you like how you can use shift layers, the different scenarios that you can use it in, and all the good stuff with that. So essentially with shift layers, my idea for it is to have a hipfire curve while having a ADS curve that is totally different. Obviously, in the FPS, you have a hipfire sense and you have an ADS sense. Both are not the same. So you can have two curves that will be utilized separately from your ADS and your hipfire, which makes more sense to me and would be a game changer for most people. Because say you have like a slower curve to slow down your hip fire, but that curve is gonna carry over to your ADS, and now your ADS is off, so you have to change your in-game ADS for it to speed up, and then your shot is not gonna be as good because it's not the right ADS you're normally on. You get the idea that I'm going with, right? So having a hip fire curve and a ADS curve would be great. So let's start off with the profiles. Like the profiles at the top here, these are the main profiles of the controller. These would essentially be your base curve, your hip fire curve. So whichever one you have selected here, you can only have one selected at a time. This would be your hip fire curve. So right now I'm in this profile. If I go in to the options here, you can see my left stick is at this, and my right stick is like this. This is not really a settings guide. If you guys want to see like a settings video for my controller or my app, just let me know in the comments. Let me know by liking the video, subscribing. That tells me that the content's good for you, you like it, and I'll continue to do more. All right. So back into it. As you can see here, this curve right here is like a dynamic curve. Again, this is in my hip fire curve, essentially. And I'm on raw. It's like a dynamic curve. And if I go back down here, you can see this is where shift layer is. If I click it, you'll then see shift at the top of everything you click because you're in the shift layer. So essentially, it's like a different profile, but you can access this profile by just pressing a single button. All right. So in here, you can see the left stick is basically the same, but the right stick is different. It's like a linear curve. So it's not being affected by any specific curve. It's linear. This is good, right? So now I can have a hip fire curve and a ADS curve separate. So you can change anything in here different. So it would be a totally different profile when you hold a specific button. You can change the trigger, you can change the vibration, you can change the lighting. In here, the lighting for the shift layer is yellow. It's going to be for the tutorial purposes. But yeah, if I go back into the base profile, right? How to set it up is like this. How to set up your shift layer button. So you go to buttons. In here, my ADS button in game is normally LT. So what I would do is to click LT. Then you go into advanced settings. You need to turn on map multiple buttons. Then you click this icon here, which is your shift layer icon. And you need to select your LT, which is your ADS, right? So now, when I press my LT button, as you can see here, it shows this icon when you have multiple buttons selected in one button. When you press LT now on my controller, it will go into this layer. So while holding that button, I will now have this curve instead of this curve, right? So I'm going to go in game and show you an example of this. So I'm going to go into Apex.
Every decision counts.
Right? So without me holding any other button, I would be in my Hipfire, right? As you can see, I'm not holding my LT. So this is the page profile, whatever you would have it set up to. I can slide jump. That's how I have it set up. Slide jumping. My slide is on the bottom. The jump is at the bottom. Paddle 2. But this is my Hipfire. Me not holding any button, right? Now, if you look at the light, you can see it's colorful. But if I hold my LT now, you can see that the light changed because the profile is different now. As I said, you can change that in the profile separately too. Anything in the shift there, you can change that as well, separate from the base profile. So now I'm ADS,
Got an upgrade.
but now I have a
Two choices,
linear
2 roads.
curve and not a dynamic curve when I hold it, right? Just like that. So instead of having a dynamic curve while I'm shooting ADS, I have a linear curve. Which makes sense, right? So every time I hold this button, it will have a linear curve instead of a dynamic curve like my hip fire. And it's like spontaneous. So if I'm doing this like I'm ADS and I'm going in and out, like it's switching it automatically once you release the button. Alright? So for example, if I go back to the app, right? For example, if I were to have the button here, if I go to buttons, if this button here was on continuous, what continuous trigger means, it's toggled. I don't know why they just didn't call it toggle, but that is what it does. I would recommend using that for like ADS. Obviously, you can use it for whatever scenario you can think of, but toggle is what continuous trigger is. If I go back to Apex now, if I go back to Apex and show you, so in Apex, if I press my trigger once, you can see I'm now stuck in this called toggle. So I'm in shift there because the light changed to yellow. As you can see,
I can choose an upgrade. Every
I'm stuck in
decision
this
counts.
until I press it again. See? Now I'm in my base profile. Like I said, like it doesn't make sense to have it like that because obviously in game you're not, unless you play like this. I don't know. I like to hold my uh trigger, so having it on toggle would make sense to me. So let me go back and change that. Uh, so I'm going to go back to the app.
Contact with target.
I'm going back to the app. Oh my goodness, what the hell has happened? I'm going back to the app, guys. All right, I'm going to turn this off. So I don't use that. But I'm just showing you as an example of what it does. Right? So that is what continuous trigger does. It acts like a toggle. So if that is enabled on any button that you have selected, it will toggle it. So any button you press with continuous trigger enabled will just toggle the button. So if you're crouch, For example, that's like a crouch toggle. If you have it on your crouch button, which I don't really see the use case for it, but obviously different games, different scenarios. So you can use that how you'd like. But yeah, shift layer. That's essentially what shift layer is and how you're able to enable it, how you should think about doing it. Again, just to go through it again, these are your base profiles up the top. This can be your Hipfire, right? It can be your Hipfire sense. So you set it up, whatever your Hipfire curve you like, you can set that up. All of the settings for your Hipfire. Then in your shift layer, you'd go in, you'd set up a curve that you'd like for your Hipfire, right? And then in your base profile, you'd set up the button. Again, you'd set up the button to be in advanced settings, multiple buttons, shift layer, and LT to access your ADS. So if you don't select so for example, even if this wasn't on, like if you just select this, just a shift layer button, this is what's gonna happen in game. Just having that button, you're not gonna be able to ADS.
Three decision
Like
counts.
in game, you're not gonna be able to ADS. As you can see, it is changing the profile, so you're going to get your shift layer, obviously, but in game you're not ADSing. So that is why you need to select multiple. That's why you need to go to advanced, select multiple, and also add that button so it presses that button as well so you can ADS in game. Alright. So I'm going to have like a settings video coming out soon. Probably. And obviously I'll be testing, trying out different curves, different sensitivities, trying to find like the best Hipfire curve, trying to find like the best ADS curve,
Got an upgraded
and all that good stuff. Again guys, if the video is useful to you, please like, comment, subscribe to the channel to stay up to date with all the latest videos. And yeah.